listening to ProveText, a Glossa House podcast by Dr. T. Michael W. Halcomb, Dr. Fredrick J. Long, Dr. Mario Melendez, Dr. Jennifer Noonan, and J. M. Smith. Welcome and enjoy.
Hello and welcome to ProveText. I'm Michael Halcomb and I'm here with Dr. Fred Long. Fred, how are you?
Hey, good. Good, Michael. How are you doing?
All right, I got my sweatshirt on here. You got a sweater on.
It's cold here, man. It's below freezing. The power went out this morning. I don't know why. There was some kind of fire, but in some sub unit. But yeah, I noticed you had your hoodie on over your head. What's going on?
Yeah, it's rainy season. Start of rainy season here, so it's cold. Do you guys have snow?
No, but it
snow?
is frost potential on the windows for sure. It's below freezing overnight. Yeah, our water's starting to freeze up on the surface.
Oh, wow. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so lots of rain going on here, monsooning kind of outside. But, well, we're picking back up. It's been a little bit since we've recorded on Galatians, so we're at Galatians 6, 2, and 3 today. So
Yeah.
For those of you who are watching, I'm going to put the text up on the screen, and if you're just listening, that, of course, is just fine as well. So let me do that here, and there we go. This is stepbible.org, and if you haven't used this site, you should really go check it out. It's a great website. So going to, it doesn't look like it's showing up. Can you see the screen, Fred, or no?
Not yet.
No? Yeah, it looks like it's struggling to...
there it is.
All right, so I'm going to read the Greek, and if there's anything I need to point out, then I'll do that. Then we'll talk about what's going on in the verse, and then recycle that. So here we go. Galatians 6:2. Alelon tavare vastazete ke utos anaplerosete ton nomon tu Christu. Yeah, so just one thing I notice here with the double lambda in the first word alelon. Actually, there's 3 lambdas there, but you have that double lambda. Remember, when you get a double letter like that, you tend to hold it out for just a split second longer. Alelon. You don't have to be dramatic about it, but alelon rather than alelon, just kind of holding it for a second. Yeah, and just as you're reading, remember that the emphasis, the stress on a word goes wherever the accent mark falls. I think for some of these, as native English speakers, we want to put the accent usually like near the end, sometimes near the beginning. Those ones that are in the middle of the word are kind of the harder ones. So this is alelon, and then vastazete, where we might want to say something like vastazete or something like that. But anaplerosete. So anyways, pay attention to where the accents fall, because that's where the intonation is.
Yeah. What I'm seeing in terms of, I've been seeing a lot of betas and then alphas.
Yeah.
It seems, I don't know, it seems friendly. I don't know. The ava sounds are kind of nice sounds, pleasant sounds, but I don't know if that's true. It just seems positive to me. Well, there's no conjunction. So that's one of the first things I look for is conjunction. So this is a syndeton. And so this indicates, in this case, instance, a break from what occurs before, a bit of a break. Now, the previous verse had a command. So we're definitely moving into commands here. Watching yourself that you not be tempted, but it's, restoring somebody. So here we have maybe something different than restoring. We have a bearing. So translation here would be be bearing the burdens of one another, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. All right, so there's some fronting going on there with the alelon, tabara, bari, tavare. So one another is fronted in the whole sentence, and it's a genitive, right, that modifies tabara, bara. So tavara is an adjective. It's a vowel stem adjective, third declension vowel stem. So the ending looks kind of weird because there's been a lengthening, but you can see the ta on the front, and that indicates it's a substantive adjective. So it means something weighty. So the weighty things or the burdens. Vastadzete is a present imperative. So this is something that we are to be doing. Be bearing the burdens of one another. So one another is the reciprocal pronoun. This is something that we do for one another. And, if you're in community, you know that people go through cycles. There are seasons where people have it hard. Give them a couple years and they'll be in a better position, and there'll be someone else that's struggling. So there's this recognition that there's a mutual caring that is to be occurring, and that we bear one another's burdens. It's a reciprocal thing. It shouldn't be just one-sided. It should be something that we do with one another. And then Paul adds to that, and thus, and in this way. So ke adds a thought to it, and utos is an adverb of manner. In this way, in this manner. So by doing this, then you have anaplerosete. You will fulfill. You will fill up the law of Christ. So pleroo means to fill or fulfill, and then you have an ana, which is not needed. This verb by itself, pleroo, means fill or fulfill. So the ana is completely unnecessary and emphasizes, maybe perfectively, like the resultant effect of fulfillment. It's emphasizing that. And in the context of Galatians, this is particularly significant, right? Because there's been quite some discussion about the nature of the law and whether believers come under the law, and rather they come under Christ and the law of Christ. That's what Paul has been stressing. So here really he's showing that there's a fulfillment of the law that really matters, and it's particularly the law of Christ. And so by having this communal giving and taking of helping one another, that this actually is what Christ wanted, and you're actually fulfilling, like really fulfilling the principle, the rule, what really Christ was after, the law of Christ.
Yeah, so this term or tavare, I know you are reading it as sort of like burden in general. I somewhere rolling around in my head, I know there's a discussion among interpreters about this being mainly a financial term. It's referring to a financial burden. I don't remember who makes that argument or where it comes from, but it's there in my head. That's kind of interesting to think about. That that may be what it's referring to.
Paul, I think you're thinking of Corinthians, right, where he doesn't want to be a burden to anybody, and it's in the context of being finances. It comes up in 2 Corinthians. Yeah.
I'm thinking of Galatians.
Oh, really? Okay, because in Corinthians, I think it has.
Yeah.
But it also can mean like I don't want to be too weighty in terms of throwing my weight around, like authority around. So I think I'm looking up LSJ right now, lexicon, weight, burden, load. It can be a burden of the womb, of weights.
Yeah.
oppressiveness.
Also a
Uh,
charge. Yeah, I got it up there on the screen. Um,
yeah,
the
op-
various.
oppressive demands, but it also
Uh,
could be good things like abundance, strength.
yeah. So I just think it's interesting. Uh, if he is talking about finances here, um, because I mean, it also makes sense of five, right? Each one should carry their own load. He uses vastasi again there in 6:5. Um, so he's speaking to a group of people. Uh, in 4, he's going to talk about comparing one's oneself to another person. People in 3, people who think they're not, like who are better than they are. Um, but if he's talking about helping each other financially, I mean, it's just interesting that's a possibility here. So I'm not sure I completely align with that view.
Mhm.
It doesn't seem to fit in the flow of the letter that he would all of a sudden just switch to talking about helping someone financially, but he has switched topics. And 6:1 lets us know that he's switched. So he
Yeah,
may be moving on to some a final pressing matter. And if this
yeah,
is his earliest letter, then or his second earliest letter, that may uh, he may be. I don't know if he's doing the collection thing yet, but um,
I think Luke Post. So Luke, he wrote his dissertation with me on the good in Paul, looking at words kalos and agathos, and his interpretation of this was, if I remember correctly, it's been many years, and his book isn't published yet. He was looking at Fortress. I thought it was going to be published. I think he was seeing a financial component to this. Look at verse 6:2, sharing all good things with the one who teaches. Um, the koinoneo, to share goods, things in common. So that suggests a financial context as well. So it's very possible. Yeah. Yeah. How about
yeah.
verse 3 then?
All right. Let's look at verse 3. I was gonna say also for 6:2 before we move on, just ton nomon to Christu, the law of Christ, and I just reiterate the point. I believe I've said it in these podcast episodes before, but um, this whole trope that we often hear, sort of in evangelicalism or Protestant Christianity, of we're no longer under the law. I don't buy it for a second. Paul tells us here that essentially we are under a law. It's the nomon tu Christu, the law or the teaching of Christ. And so
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's an important point to make, that we still are under a law.
Yeah.
It's not maybe the Mosaic law that we're under, but that has reached its culmination in the law of Christ, which we are under.
Yeah.
Um,
And that needs to be, what you're saying needs to be also supplemented by the increasing understanding that the word Torah means instruction.
yeah,
So
exactly.
Christ embodies God's instruction for us. As the ideal king, he embodies virtue and he sets the example for us how to live and be different in the world. So that's to support what you're saying, is that we are under authority. We are under a rule or a body of teaching and instruction, and Christ is the one
Exactly.
who sets that agenda for us. As
Yes.
followers of him, as learners, disciples of his, we are under his tutelage, under his instruction, under
Yes.
his authority and lordship and everything. Yeah. Good
Yep.
point. Yep.
Yeah, so 6:3 says Igardokitis ineti medenon frenapata eavton. So let me do that again. Igardokitis ineti medenon frenapata eavton. So that's another word that frenapata. It's just not normal as an English speaker to
Yeah.
put the stress on that last syllable. Like I want to say frenapata, or something like that. So,
Yeah.
and a couple of things to notice there are the tis and the t. Right, they're throwing their accents back on doki and ine,
Mm.
so you're going to pronounce them as if they're one word.
Yeah.
Igardokitis, ineti.
Yeah.
So just a couple pronunciation things there.
So in this verse, what I'm seeing is a lot of iota sounds, e sounds, right? So
A lot.
e,
Yeah.
doki, tis, ine, ti, meden, on. So yeah, it begins, the previous verse had a lot of alpha sounds. This one has e sounds. So I don't know what to make of that, how intentional that is, but it seems notable to me.
Mm-hmm.
And this verse is rather negative, right? The one above is rather positive. Versus e. Seems like e is harsher for some reason. So this is substantiatory. It's supportive. The gar there that is a post positive. It occurs second in its clause. The e sets up a conditional clause. The e is a conditional framework. E works with the indicative mood. So I'm looking for indicative mood, and I find it with doki, which is an epsilon contract verb, to think or to suppose, something like that. This has to do with the realm of mental conception. And there's different verbs that do this. This is one that has to do with appearance or supposing. There's a little bit of uncertainty here. So, and tis is the subject of that. It means that's an indefinite pronoun, someone. So for if someone supposes, and then you have ine. This is the content of what is supposed. It's an infinitive from imi. So this verb dokeo often takes an infinitive to complete, like its content. It's a content clause. So supposes to be something. T is a neuter, singular, indefinite pronoun, something. So it's kind of interesting. Considers to be something, not someone. So the neuter creates a little bit of distance and objectifies, at least shows what this person is thinking in an objectified kind of sense, thinking that there's something, which is kind of odd, something in some kind of special capacity, but it's neuter, singular. So it's interesting. If someone supposes to be something, implied something important, something special, something whatever better,
When they are
and
not.
whether they are or not. And then you have a meden on. The meden on is a post-nuclear participle, circumstantial clause. Literally just means being nothing. And here there's probably there's a concessive implicature. This is a concessive sense, although being nothing. So they think to be something, although being nothing. And again, it's just intriguing that it's neuter singular. Neuter singular. So they're thinking to be something while being nothing. So, we could translate that either although being nothing or all along being nothing. It's fine. It's providing an explanation of what attends them while they're thinking to be something.
Well,
In
it
fact,
reminds
is
me of
there nothing?
It reminds me of 2-2. So that
Yeah,
was rolling around in my head too,
yeah,
right? Where he says katedian de tus
yeah.
dokusin, and then you have also 2-6, which really is the one I was thinking of.
That's parallel. Yeah,
Yeah, dokundon ineti.
from the ones thinking or supposing to be something. That's the
Yeah,
exact same idiom. Yeah, it's great that
yeah.
your mind took you back to that space, because I think that's And can you go back up just a little bit?
Look at 2:9 real quick. I'll
Yeah.
go back up, but eudokunde stuluina, those thinking themselves pillars.
Yeah, to be pillars. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that term pillars is really interesting just from ancient topography and architecture. I'd want to know what kind of pillars they are, because you can have commemorative pillars to someone important, so but the thing is about such pillars is that they're static, so yeah. So yeah, this is the realm that we're in, is this kind of mental exercise in regard to oneself, thinking of oneself in a certain way. There's an inner dialogue that's going on here that's inappropriate or problematic. And we're going to get, this is all the supposition. This is the if clause, the subordinate clause, the if clause. We're going to get the main clause in the last two words, phrenapata eauton. They deceive themselves, or he or she deceives himself. Yeah, that's the main sentence. So if this obtains to be true, they deceive themselves. And this is a present condition, present simple condition, the type of condition E with the indicative followed by the indicative, present indicative, is called a present simple condition, which suggests it's ongoingly true right now. It's spoken to the simple circumstance which obtains now. So that's rather interesting. So there is some suggestion that there's some kind of arrogance happening in the circumstance of the community right now, and that verb apatao has the additive phren on the front, which is from phrein, which is one's mind. So he didn't need to use that verb. It's an unusual verb. He could have just used apatao, deceive, but to to use a phren apatao is even more to construe the mental exercise that this thing is that's occurring inside this person. So basically, this person is a mental case, in a sense that there's a deception taking place in the particularly in the realm of their thinking, a real deception taking place. So yeah, I'm intrigued by that verb used there. It's an unusual verb. Yeah,
It's interesting, the whole idea of being able to deceive ourselves. Like, like
yeah,
a person can deceive themselves.
yeah.
And I
Kind of
was,
scary. How would we know?
yeah, well, I saw this meme posted from a former Asbury professor,
Uh-oh.
nonetheless, he's been long gone. He's a philosophy professor.
Mm.
And he was posting this pro LGBT meme, and I pointed out, like, this is laden with logical fallacies. Like, I can see 3 right away. And then a former Asbury student who was under that professor's tutelage chimed in and the challenged me, and it basically just said, "Oh, very convenient that you're seeing logical fallacies," as if I was somehow like biased. And then the student says, "Professor so and so, do you see any logical fallacies?" And the professor replies, "Not a single one." And I'm telling you this story because you have a philosophy professor here with a PhD who had been in a classroom for years, a pastor here who has at least an MDiv and a bachelor's degree, and both of their minds had been so clouded and deceived, like they had deceived themselves, that they couldn't even discern simple surface level logical fallacies on the face of this meme, right? And it just astounded me.
Mm-hmm.
And this
Yeah.
idea, what Paul talks about in Romans 1, right? When you're handed over,
Yeah.
you just your mind sort of becomes so diluted, and you're eventually just handed over to that.
Yeah.
And once you're handed over to that, it's like a snowball effect. It just keeps
Yeah.
going and going and going.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Paul
you
talks about that in Ephesians quite a bit. Darkened in your understanding, having
yeah,
a vanity of your mind. There's a darkening. Um, there's a loss of perception, basic observation. Talking
yes,
with Pat Holly, we're recording these episodes. Really excited to get that released. And he's got a book he's working with us on, but he's basically his premise from counseling and from science understanding of consciousness that our two basic mental spirit capacities are observation, perception, and will. And those can get off. And if we're off, we're not in reality anymore. We're not
uh,
able to see what is actually there. And
yes,
so, man, I think there's a lot there. And people cope, like, and I'm speaking out of experience, going through hardship. We cope in ways to run away from what is true. Like sometimes it can be so brutal what is true that we fill with other things and we're coping. So
mhm,
the reality sometimes can be very brutal, but we need to radically try to align ourselves with that, even as painful and as hard as that can be.
mhm,
And so this person here in this verse 6:3 is someone who is self-deceived, particularly construing their mind, the phrane as the Greek word phrane as a place where this is occurring. I mean, this has all kinds of implications. Sin blinds us. It
yeah,
blinds us. We all have blinders on to some extent, but sin really puts these blinders on, and we can only see what we want to see. And
yeah,
some of us are looking out. This is like that's the view of the world. It's not very expansive, And the gospel wants us to take those blinders off. And of course, this is very painful to see things that we don't want to face things that we'd rather not. It's a lot easier to look out of this kind of tunnel vision, because I get to direct what I see. But the reality is that he wants us to fully see, and that calls us to responsibility, right? To act at times, to speak up when we'd rather just see like this and just look away. But if
mhm,
we got the full gaze, it calls us to responsibility. Yeah.
mhm. Yeah. Well, good thoughts. We'll stop there. Do you want to have a parting shot, or you want me to share one?
Why don't you go ahead and share one?
Yeah, I maybe have shared this on the podcast before. It's my all-time favorite quote. This is if I have a headstone, like a gravestone, I want perhaps this put on there, but it's the quote from Count Zinzendorf, my favorite quote. Preach Christ, die, be forgotten.
Be forgot, die, and be forgot.
Preach Christ, die, be forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
so yeah, we'll stop there and say, we hope that helps. Thank you for listening. If you would like the episode and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're on there, or our Spotify subscribers list, hit that button and then share this as well.
Yeah.
The podcast is really starting to take off. It's growing, and we're excited about that. If you have
Don't,
episode ideas, reach
yeah,
out
don't
to us.
forget us.
Yeah,
Episode ideas. Don't forget us, though, ironically.
yeah, don't yeah, don't forget us. Yeah, I guess that's a little jarring to say, but yeah. So share with everybody, and we're just excited. It's cool because we're starting to get people emailing and suggesting episode ideas.
Yeah.
I got one person who um almost on a daily basis, if not every other day, is sending me ideas for the Fallacy of the Week podcast, and so many of those episodes have been based on like memes or things that he sent me. That's Jeremy, and then we have a guy named Kevin who's always in conversation about the podcast and sending
Mm,
ideas, and I'm really excited because heading into 2024, it looks like we're gonna have at least right there, sort of out of the gate, a handful of more podcasts, new people coming on. But then,
Mhm.
as you were saying, you and Pat Holly have one coming on. So a lot of good stuff coming down the pipeline, and we're excited about that. So
All right, when
yeah,
are you gonna announce how many what's our downloads and reach? Is it gonna make
yeah,
an
I
announcement at
I
some
am
point?
maybe later on, but
Yeah,
trying to keep that on the wraps for the time being.
yeah.
Yeah,
Basically gonna meet
to-
your goal. That's
yeah,
all I can say
they're
right now. What it was that goal, that will be announced later, but
yeah,
you've
yeah, yeah.
worked really hard at it. Yeah,
Yeah, so it's doing really well. I'm really excited about it, and yeah, man, the podcast is growing, and we haven't paid to do any advertising or anything like that. We're just letting it happen organically up to this point. So
yeah,
thanks to everybody for supporting the podcast and listening. And
yeah.
if you have ideas, please get in touch with us and let us know. So, well, we'll stop there and say we hope that helps.
Interested in growing your ancient language skills but not sure where to start? Glossa House can help. From illustrated readers and short stories to lexicons and grammars, Glossa House offers a variety of resources for beginning, intermediate, and experienced ancient language learners. Head to glossahouse.com today. Glossa House, language resources for the global community.